Hello and welcome to My Familia Homeschool. My name is Marissa. I live in Miami, Florida with my 3 daughters and my husband, and we are a family that has chosen homeschool as the way that we will educate our children. On this channel, I love talking about resources, homeschooling, methods, ideas, activities, and just motherhood stuff. So if that is something that is interesting to you, if that is something that you think could be helpful for you, for your family, give us a thumbs up on this video and subscribe so you can join us next week with My Familia Homeschool. Today we're going to talk about something that I'm super passionate about. I love books, I love reading, and one of my favorite things about homeschooling is exploring these books with my daughters, is sharing this love of reading with them. One of my biggest passions and priorities within our homeschool is that my daughters will fall in love with reading. I am a big believer that if you can read, you can learn anything that you need to or want to learn. And so I want my girls to love reading. So today I'm going to talk about a few tips of how you can do this, how you can encourage that love of reading within your family. My first tip is develop a family reading routine or ritual. This is something that we've done since my daughters have been really little. But if your children aren't little anymore, don't worry. It's not too late to start. You can always start a new habit or a new routine. But we know that when something is part of our daily routine, our daily habit, it's really easy for it to happen every single day. When we do it at the same time, when we do it the same way, usually it's going to happen. And so this is great because maybe one day nothing happened, no learning, or you feel like no learning happened within your homeschool. But you have that reading routine there. So you can know that you guys read together, you guys had that reading time together. So this is something that we started when my daughter was really young. We would choose all the books, I would let her pick them out, and we would sit and read. And we would read for like a good hour, which is a long time for a 2-year-old. But it was something that she loved doing. She loved sitting down with me. She loved that one-on-one time. She loved reading. And this is a routine, a habit that has continued throughout our homeschool life up until this point. Every day before their rest time in the middle of the day, we will sit down and we will read. One thing that I found super helpful in that routine, in that reading time together, is to pick a time when they're eating. So my girls are sitting down and eating lunch, and that's when I'm reading. Their mouths are busy, their hands are busy, and their ears are listening. So that's another piece of advice that I give you. A great time for your kids to listen to read alouds is when they're eating. My next tip is read what interests your child. So if your child loves construction trucks, find books about construction trucks. If your child loves animals, find books about that. If your child loves princesses, find books about that. If your child loves pirates or kings and queens or whatever it is, find books about those topics that your children love. When your kids see that there's books about things that they're super passionate about, they see the value in reading. Another tip that I have is try to find books that reflect your daily experiences. So if you just had a new baby, find books about that. If you're going on a trip, find books about that, or maybe even about the place where you're going to go. If you're moving to a new home, find books about that. If grandma and grandpa are gonna move in and stay with you, find books about kids that live with their grandma and grandpa. Finding books about things that happen in their life help them to transition into those new life stages, but also help them to feel identified with what the book is telling them. My next tip is let your kids pick out the books. One of my kids' favorite thing to do is go to the library and pick out books. It's so fun for them, it's so exciting for them, and it's a great thing for them to be a part of the process of the books that we're picking out. Of course, I look at them and make sure that they're okay for their age and okay for what we value as a family, but them being able to go and pick out their own books is a great way to help them fall in love with reading. My next tip is one that some of us might not be the biggest fans of, but it is valid and important. Reread those books that your kids love. I know that we might get bored of reading that same book over and over and over again, but our kids don't. We know that repetition is the way that they learn, just like we teach them day after day after day that A says ah. We read those same books over and over and over and over again. Rereading books also helps them to take in all of that information from those books and to understand the full story. I remember myself reading books a second or third time, and each time I see new details and new things about that story. And my last tip is to encourage storytelling. telling. So on one side, that's narration. One thing that we do a lot within our homeschool with my oldest daughter, who is now 6, is narrating. So we will read a chapter book. Right now we're going through the Little House on the Prairie series, and we'll read a chapter, and at the end of that chapter I will ask her, what did you understand? What did we read about in that chapter? And she will tell me, I will write it down, and she will copy it. One thing that has surprised me is how much my 3-year-old, almost 4, she'll be 4 in May, has gotten involved in that process. And so she will also tell me what we read about in that chapter. I've been so surprised at how much she's truly understanding, but it's because this is something that we have done since she was born, and she's just used to this routine, and she's used to listening to reading, understanding it, processing the information, and speaking it, talking about it. On the other side, encourage them to tell their own stories. This is great for creativity, this is great for imagination, but it's also great for processing their thoughts and speaking them out. This is going to be super helpful when they start to write, when they start to have to write assignments for their schoolwork, when they want to write down a story. It's great for them to practice those skills verbally beforehand. Being able to think and imagine something, a scenario in their mind, and then speak it out with their mouths is a great skill to have. This also helps them to learn the order of a story, to learn beginning, middle, end, and start to develop those skills as well. One way that we've implemented this is in the summertime when we go to the swimming pool, we have our swimming time, and when that time is over, we'll get out and we'll sit down and we'll kind of drip dry for a little bit. And while we're doing that, I'll say, okay, Abby, we're going to tell stories. And I will start and I'll tell them a story, make something up. It's usually kind of silly, kind of has some kind of a lesson to it. And I'll tell a story. And then I'll say, okay, it's your turn. And she'll tell a story. And then we'll say, okay, Ellie, it's your turn. And she'll tell a story. And usually they want to go around the circle 2, 3, 4 times until I'm like, okay, I'm done telling stories. But they love it, and it's such a great ability for them to develop. Obviously, everyone's telling stories according to their level of understanding, their level of development, but it's a great skill to start working on. So those are the tips that I have about how to help your child to fall in love with learning. Develop routines of reading in your family. Read books that interest your child. Read books that reflect your family experiences. Allow your child to pick out books that they love. Read those favorite books over and over and over again, and start developing those skills of telling stories. I hope these tips were helpful for you. If they were, give us a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can join us next week with My Familia Homeschool.